does the collective healing of the Jewish people to you look like?
Well, we have to get over a lot of our traumas,
Personal.
individually, but mainly also collectively. I don't think we've gotten over the trauma of the Holocaust at all. You know, the Hebrew perspective of going through our traumas is reliving them, right? We create these holidays to relive those traumas. Avadim ha'inu, slaves we were, like
Right.
we went through Egypt. We were the Maccabees. We were in Persia.
We do the
were
Passover
over there.
Haggadah, we say the story.
Exactly. We see ourselves as we are those ancestors that are living here today, and this is our story. This is where we messed up. Right? We're very critical of ourselves. The Torah is the only religious book that criticizes its own people, right? And this is what we've had to overcome, and this was the solution, and this was the lesson. Now, the Holocaust can arguably be one of the worst traumas the Jewish people have ever been through history. We've memorialized it. We light some candles, we bring a speaker, we watch a movie, we make a post, we say never again. But we don't really go through and live and say, that wasn't just our grandparents' generation. That was us. This happened to all of us, our grandparents and us, that DNA, that
So
trauma.
what would that look like practically? If I'm inspired by your words, what am I doing?
Well, does anyone study what happened before the Holocaust, really? Of like why Hitler took power and how he was successful in doing it and how the Jewish people were? You know, and I'll give you an example. For me, when I came to campus, I started at UCLA before transferring to Columbia in 2013 after the army. And this is when I realized that there was a growing movement of anti-Israel, anti-Semitism on campuses. And I went to the leaders in Los Angeles at the time and I asked them, listen, why are we only doing events in the Jewish safe spaces? Like, why aren't we going out to the campus, creating coalitions, speaking? You mean you don't want to hear about black rights from KKK members? You don't want to hear about women rights from people who are misogynists? Why are the only people talking about Israel and the Jewish people are anti-Israel and anti-the Jewish people? And what they told me was, don't worry about it. It'll go away. If you do something, it'll just get worse. No, don't worry. Like, they're just being ideological while they're on campus. Eventually they grow up and they realize that there's a real world. Clearly we see that that's not the case. And that experience with these leaders telling me this reminded me of something that I had read when I did the trip called March of the Living, a trip that I recommend every Jew to do when you're young, when you're old, it doesn't matter when, where you get to go to Poland and experience some of the concentration camps and learn a little bit of the history of what happened there. And on this trip that I took, it was when I was in senior year of high school in 2011, they gave us a packet of letters on the bus, letters written by different Jewish leaders at the time in the decade leading to the Shoah, meaning it didn't happen overnight where Jews are a part of society and the next day they're being killed. There was a rise and levels of anti-Semitism. What were the Jewish leaders saying to each other at the time? Don't worry about it. It'll go away. If you do something, it'll just get worse. You even had Jews making the argument, yeah, maybe Hitler wrote Mein Kampf while he was in prison, but that was just a crazy period in his past. Anyways, he's going to be the leader, so might as well support him. You had Jews making the argument they had to financially support Hitler to create relations with him. And then all of a sudden we find ourselves years later, right, having said never again every single year, at least once, if not twice a year, but not actually putting into application to make sure and understand how do we get here, right? Anti-Semitism rises. We let that happen, right? If we could have created the state of Israel after the Holocaust, with 6 million dead, with millions more in despair, with all the things that were taken from us, you don't think we could have done it before? Right? When clearly throughout history, when Jews are united, empowered, and fulfilling their purpose, we overcome all the greatest of traumas, including the Holocaust afterwards, and then going and creating the state of Israel. And when we look at the Jewish people, how they were before, they were completely divided, right? Reform, Orthodox, fighting each other, completely assimilating, right? Going at people like the person that I have my name from and saying, you want to be Jewish? If you were just become more German, we wouldn't be attacked. And it's because of people like you that were being persecuted, right? And so that was our mentality and mindset. So of course we didn't stand up for ourselves. Of course we didn't do anything. And I have enough respect for the Jewish people. And I love the Jewish people to a point, and I hold them on such a standard that I believe we could have prevented something like that from happening. And so many, I made a comment like this and so many people came after me. This was, Purim last year. And they're like, how could you blame us on the Holocaust? And say, I didn't blame the Holocaust on us. It's not us that made the Holocaust. It's us that have a responsibility to prevent that from happening. What's the point of saying never again?
If we don't even know what we're saying never again too.
It's a commitment, right? It's not just a word that comes out of your mouth. It's a promise that each generation we make sure doesn't happen again. And this persecution, you think it started with the Holocaust? It happened many times before. When are we going to learn that lesson? We should have known it before the Holocaust. We should have done something to prevent it. And yes.
I'm thinking while you're talking is about
one more point, because it's important to add this. Yes, there were also Jews who stood up, right? There was people who fought back, but too little and too late.
Right. There's As you're talking, I'm thinking about at least the way the message of Hanukkah was communicated to me, and the lesson that we always learned, growing up Chabad, where there's a lot of outreach, and Hanukkah was Jewish pride, right? It was Pride Week, right? We stood out there with the menorahs and everything else. And where was I? Where I think it was so visiting my grandparents in France. I was always told, wear a baseball cap, don't wear your keep outside, show hate. And it was so different than what we did in Brooklyn. There was like, hey, massive Jewish pride, and the menorah, and the message that sent, that there was a period of time where they came after us, and we're lighting this menorah, not in the house, at the window. Everyone should see it. Even kippah, I didn't wear a kippah for many years, but 2 years ago I saw a politician, I think it was in New York or California, there was some anti-Semitism right around a few months into COVID. There were some things happening. And someone said, well, maybe Jews shouldn't make themselves so obvious.
Yeah, well, you know what I'd say to that? We should be afraid of what happens when Jews are afraid.
Right.
That's what we should be afraid of.
Right. Immediately after that is when I put on my my kippah, because that's an insane message. So you're saying that, do you agree with me on the message of Hanukkah, that it's in some way communicated a certain Jewish pride and
Jewish empowerment, the overcoming of Hellenistic periods of assimilating, and the Greeks coming, and miracles of light, and Maccabees being strong? I mean, when I think of a Jew, I think of that. I don't think of someone eating bagels and lox and living in Crown Heights, right?
There's also so many things we do that identify us as Jewish, right? The menorah being on the outside. Yeah. In addition, a mezuzah, right? It's like, hey, this is a Jewish home. This is an announcement, whether it's a kippah or otherwise. It's
or even our names that is
right.
Like
oftentimes very.
And that's also Jewish. A conversation of people saying that Jews are white passing, right? Some Jews may have light skin, and if they hide their kippah and Magen David, maybe in certain periods they might come off as white passing, although it didn't really help much for the Jews that were living in Europe, which were more white Jews in terms of their skin color than others. They were still found and persecuted. And I would say to that, I mean, the conversation of white passing is much more nuanced, because if you look on a list of names and you have Yair Cohen and Shoshana Levi and all these different Jewish names, and then you have name of let's say a Native American that's like Joe Smith, and a black person, Crystal Jackson, right? Those are white passing names, right? Given, of course, these are names of slave masters that were passed down to them because their identity was stolen. But on this list of names, who's white passing and who's not? If you go through a community, right, and you see mezuzot on houses, and on other houses you don't have mezuzot, people there could be white, could be black, could be Native American, could be whatever they want. But in this situation, they're not passing as anything, but Jews are sticking out. So there are many experiences of Jews sticking out beyond what other people experience that most of other societies don't understand of what we actually go through. So this is also part of the conversation.
So to play devil's advocate with that, your message is be more proud, stick out more.
Yes. Again,
but most of the attacks on Jews are against Orthodox Jews, who are very obviously Jewish.
I would say it depends. If you go to college campuses, it's not necessarily on them. I think it depends on which community. But yeah, when people who are angry towards the Jewish people think that it's okay to enact what they believe deep inside of them because no one has stood up, that's what happens when you're afraid of who you are. That's the consequence, right? When I would go to France to visit my family, I was told the same thing. Tuck in your Magen David, put your kippah on the side, don't go out there and say who you are. And I refused to take off my Magen David. I didn't have the words to explain it. But today I realized that although taking off your Magen David might minimize the potential risk of you as an individual in the moment of getting attacked,
it's much more dangerous.
But for the collective, it's far more dangerous than what it is to the individual.